Tom Cole going on the radio today and talking about how there's really nothing we can do and now it's going to be the supreme law of the land, I have to say that I totally disagree with him. I believe there is something we can do because it's a fundamental element of contract law that if the contract is in breach, that action can be suspended on that contract until the breach is fixed. I believe that the federal government breached that contract with our state by way of this recent health care bill, which forces us to purchase something or be fined. That doesn't appear anywhere in the Constitution, not even in the Commerce Clause. We have the right to hold the other party, the United States government, the federal Congress, to account when it breaches that contract. Also, contrary to Tom Cole's comments today on KTOK, it does not avail the federal government to claim the supremacy clause. Because once the contract is in breach, it's completely normal and fundamental contract law to suspend that contract until the breach is cured. So look at the contract, look at it this way. If you are a tenant in an apartment and you lease in that apartment and the landlord refuses to fix the plumbing, you can suspend, in a lot of contracts, you can suspend payment on the rent until the plumbing gets fixed. Okay? Now, when our representative comes along and tells us, hey, we're just going to have to put up with this when it's the supreme law of the land until November, until we can get the elections fixed. That's like telling us, hey, you just have to go ahead and pay that rent because the landlord is a rich and powerful man. There's nothing you can do about it. And I disagree. I disagree. I believe there is something we can do about it. And that is we can start calling our state legislatures in droves, by the hundreds, by the thousands, and demanding that they stand up and act on the sovereignty that this state has to enforce our contract with America and to stop action on that contract until specifically this breach is cured and others as well. Effect these remedies right away. I'm going to ask all of you, not just to come here and listen to some speeches tonight, but in the days that follow, to get on your phones and start calling your state representatives, start calling the House and Senate leadership of the state of Oklahoma, start calling Drew Edmondson and the governor, and demand that they assert Oklahoma's sovereign right to cure these contract breaches and these infringements upon your liberty. Because if they don't do it, no one else will, at least until November, when we can take that Congress back. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions. Expect that the United States Congress is going to term limit itself? No. But who can set some term limits? The state legislature can determine how many years I can serve as your congressman, how many years someone out here can serve as your senator, and they can put it in our state constitution, and then we'll have term limits. So you want term limits? Right here. And they've already shown they can do it. They passed it on themselves, didn't they? You guys got term limits, right? Well, was it 4 terms for?
6 terms in the House, 6 years in total, 12 years total.
12 years total. That's not back to back. That's total, right? So we can start doing that, folks, if we talk to our state legislatures, and run the Congress who's drunk on power. Go to our state legislatures who have the sovereign right to pass those laws about who can serve and how long, right? And we can get that done. And I'm on record as saying that. It's on my website. I put it out there everywhere that I would encourage all of you guys, please, let's start a trend. If Oklahoma does it first, how many states will follow? The militia captains that showed up at Lexington, that left their farms in Massachusetts, in Boston, and other places, when they got the call that the British were coming and they gathered up their men, they had no idea whether the other militia captains were going to show up or whether or not they were going to show up with their 20 men and get hanged. But they grabbed their powder and their muskets and they showed up. And they whooped the British. And they whooped them good. Okay? And that's what we have to be willing to do. We have to be willing to overcome that natural cynicism because of what we've seen. And we have to be willing to be courageous and vote for people that are not part of the establishment, they are not part of the incumbency, but they're willing to come and talk to all of you and answer these unrehearsed questions and to lay our lives aside on the line to do this temporary service. And if we can get not 5, but 30 or 40 elected on this cycle, what kind of message does that send to the incumbents? What kind of message does that send when we finally start kicking some of them out? Well, then some that have been riding the fence, that have been kind of okay, get the message. And then you go back in 2012 and you get some more and you throw them out. Okay? So I understand your cynicism. And you're right, it's not going to happen with just one person from the 2nd and one person from the 4th. And folks, it's got to be a nationwide effort that you talk to your friends and your family all over the country and extol them to stop voting for the establishment and for the incumbents. Mine is this new agency that's going to get started to run this healthcare program. That'd be the first one to go. And right behind that is the Federal Department of Education, which is running around trying to tell us how to educate our children here in Oklahoma when we know how to educate our children in Oklahoma. It's unconstitutional. Right. However, Article 1, Section 8 allows us to pay for debt incurred, even if it was incurred unconstitutionally. People have paid into those systems for their entire lives. Any court in this land is going to say that they become detrimentally reliant upon it, and because they paid into it, they're owed back out, just like if they bought into a private type of healthcare or a private type of investment. So what we need to do at the federal level is eliminate those programs for the generations that have not paid into them. It's a long process, folks, but it has to start somewhere. We have to recognize that the federal government does not exist to steal from us to give to other people, whether it's called bailouts or Social Security or subsidies or whatever we call it. Okay? So we do have to stop that somewhere, and the way we stop that is we say, okay, unfortunately, yes, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, those things are unconstitutional. We have to admit it, just like a drug addict or an alcoholic has to admit when they're doing something wrong. We have to admit that's wrong. But we also have to pay back the debts that we incurred. We owe them, and we have to pay them back. And the people that have become detrimentally reliant upon those things need to be grandfathered out, and those debts paid. But the generations that have yet to pay into them need to be told, no, we're not going to do that. You need to invest privately. You need to invest in your own health care, and that way we can end those. On my website. I don't plan to propose too much legislation, folks, just so you know, because I view legislation as the opposite of liberty. Every time the Congress legislates, some piece of your liberty has now been taken away from you. So when I go to Washington, the goal is to try to repeal as much legislation as possible. That's right. But I do have one item, and this legislation is for the Congress, not for us. And this piece of legislation that I've been talking about on my website is that you that we would require that bills be read from the floor of the House for you to be able to vote affirmatively for that bill. So if you're not in the room and you don't hear it read, you can come in and vote no, but you can't vote yes if you did not sit on the floor of the House and hear that bill read. Now, how many bills you think are going to be 2,000 pages long if 435 hours you have to sit in there and listen to that bill?